Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Background, grab a seat, and let me tell you about some sweet revenge I pulled off at the US Postal Service back in the 2010s that cost a bullying full-time carrier his union job. In the summer of 2011, I landed a summer gig as a casual carrier for the USPS. They used to bring on summer temps to cover for all the full-time carriers who typically took their vacations during the warmer months. The USPS has strict rules about delivery time frames. People could lose their jobs if they took too long to complete tasks. Carriers were both openly and covertly monitored and timed on tasks, and we had this fancy computerized time system that was pretty cutting edge back then. They'd secretly tail carriers a few times a year to make sure they were busting their butts the entire time they were out of the post office. The building even had hidden back hallways, passive sound monitoring, and concealed raised viewing areas where they could observe the sorting floor undetected. High-tech cameras and mics were still pricey back then, so they relied on clever architecture and the eyes and ears of the postal inspectors. We had to clock in and out of tasks so they could track productivity down to the second. Route walkers were expected to move like lightning, and better routes went to faster carriers. Slow pokes got relentlessly hounded to pick up the pace and faced disciplinary action for their sluggishness. Think of Newman from Seinfeld. Going postal due to overwork wasn't just a joke. People would actually snap and harm their bosses. I hear it's even worse now with GPS tracking. Before the internet took over, there used to be an insane amount of mail shuffled around the country every day. We're talking quantities that would blow your mind compared to what we see now. I was a broke college kid home for the summer and willing to work any hours they threw at me, so the supervisors took a shine to me. I also got along great with most of the full-time carriers because I was a hard worker and didn't rock the boat. Plus, for other reasons you'll soon discover. I'm a pretty big dude, 6'5" or about 195 centimeters, around 210 tubs back then, and I could lug a ton of weight, which made management happy. Being in my early 20s with long legs, I could also move fast while carrying a lot. Sorting mail back then was labor-intensive and took a while to get the hang of. I had a regular route that I'd deliver in the afternoons, sorted by a regular carrier. In the mornings, I'd usually handle odd jobs, help move heavy stuff around, or do special deliveries. I'd also cover for full-time carriers on vacation or whose T6 was out. Quick note, mail delivery happens 6 days a week, but full-time carriers only work 5 days. The T6 is a full-time carrier who covered the 6th day for 5 routes. This way everyone only worked 5 days a week. Back then, tons of retail catalogs were mailed to houses. I mean tons. Some were way bigger than today's magazines. We also delivered regular magazines, ads, packages, and samples. Lots of companies would mail free samples of products like laundry detergent, shampoo, and other liquids to every house on the route. Carriers hated these because they were bulky and heavy, slowing you down and wearing you out. Usually, carriers would spread the really heavy stuff out over the week. Now, let's get to the revenge. I got assigned to do the T6 work for Mike, name changed, for a few months. F-Fatched at King Mike. Picture a washed-up phys ed teacher in his 40s, terrible mustache, about 5'7", wore knockoff sunglasses like he thought he was Magnum PI and had an opinion about everything. Mike finds out I'm his T6 and decides he's gonna dump all the heavy stuff on me, so once a week I'd get hit with the entire week's worth of heavy mail for this jerk's route. I confronted him about it and he just laughed in my face. "Listen, kid," Mike sneered. "There's nothing you can do about it. Welcome to the real world." The other full-time carriers didn't like Mike much, but I was just a temp and he was a permanent fixture, so they told me to just suck it up. I went to our boss and even escalated to the postmaster, but they shut me down. "He's full-time, you're a temp. Deal with it," they said. If the mail needed to go out that day to meet the deadline, I had to make it happen. The postmaster's exact words were, "Just deliver every piece of mail for the route as fast as you can and don't worry about the time it takes or anything else. You're raking in huge OT on this route." They did talk to Mike, and the worst of it stopped, but I was still doing most of the heavy lifting on his route. Remember how I mentioned everyone was always on the clock and tracked? In my first week, some of the nicer folks pulled me aside and made it crystal clear that I shouldn't move too quickly when delivering full-time carriers' routes. It could make them look bad and cause trouble. As a temp, I should always take longer than the full-time carriers because 1. My job was temporary and the USPS didn't really track temps closely. 2. I had 0 experience, so everything should take me longer. 3. This was a union shop and they'd hate to have to kick my butt for messing up their jobs. And 4. Most of these people were awesome and I wanted to be a team player. So, I had good reasons to move slowly and not make the full-time people look bad. Side note, I'm all for unions and workers' rights, so this isn't meant to knock unions, but you need to know the context. I decided to wreck Mike's job since he was such a bullying little tool. I requisitioned 2 extra mail carrier bags, you know, those over-the-shoulder satchels you always see. When they asked why, I told them straight up it was to carry all the heavy items on Mike's route without having to keep going back to my Jeep to reload. The postmaster personally gave it the green light. After covering Mike's route 1 to 3 times per week, he called in sick a lot too. For a few weeks, I knew it like the back of my hand and was staying on top of the heavy stuff. Once I felt comfortable with the route, I started running it. I'd load up 3 mail bags for each segment of the route and jog or run the whole thing. Mike's route usually took him about 4.5 hours to walk. This was probably accurate for him, and he'd been on the route for several years. I'd finish it in 3 hours or less. Every single day, rain or shine, no matter how many magazines, samples, or packages were waiting. Nobody really noticed I was coming back so quickly and punching out of his route when I was only doing it a few times a week. I'd come back, pick up other work, and get that done. The real fun started when Mike took a 2-week vacation and I handled his route 6 days a week. Since I was doing the work right, there was never a backlog of heavy items landing on me once a week. This made it even easier to jog or run his route as I was back to using 1 mailbag. And fast walking jogging was enough to get it done quickly. I often finished in under 3 hours and never took longer than about 3.5 hours. My personal best was under 2.5 hours. After the first week, my supervisor and the postmaster pulled me aside. "Jake," the postmaster began, "we need to talk about your timekeeping practices." I nodded. "Sure, what's up? Are you sure you're logging everything correctly?" I confirmed that I was doing everything by the book. "I punch into Mike's route when I leave, keep all the right logs, and punch back in when I return," I explained. The postmaster leaned forward. "About Mike's route. You complained about the mail volume a few weeks ago, and you used to take 6, 7, or more hours to get it delivered. What changed?" I played dumb. "Oh, I've been spreading the heavy deliveries out over the whole week. It's made a huge difference." "Are you really delivering all the mail?" he pressed. "You're not hiding or throwing away mail, are you? That's a serious problem if true." I put on my best offended face. "Absolutely not. I deliver every single piece of mail for the route every day. I'm shocked you'd even suggest that." Then I dropped the bomb. "To be honest," I said, feigning innocence, "I'm having trouble understanding why this route is budgeted 4.5 hours when it clearly can be done much faster. It's mostly dense multifamily housing, which means less walking. And get this, lots of people on the route seem surprised that I don't want to stop for a soda or chat for a while like Mike always does." Pure lies, of course. I laid it on thick with my "gosh, I want to help" the USPS voice. "I'm just delivering all the mail as fast as I can and not worrying about anything else like you told me to." I kept jogging the route for the next 6 days, consistently finishing in much less time than Mike. Mike had no clue about any of this. On his first day back, he made a point of finding me to ask how I enjoyed doing all the hard work for him while he was vacationing. "So, kid," Mike smirked, "how'd you like carrying my load while I was sipping margaritas on the beach?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I learned a valuable lesson about how to treat your coworkers, Mike." He laughed and sauntered off to sort mail. A few minutes later, he came back with a smug grin. "Hey, I got you a souvenir," he said, then pulled his middle finger out of his pocket. Classic Mike. That was my last week at the USPS before heading back to college. I kept in touch with some friends I'd made there, and one of them was thrilled to tell me that Mike got fired about 2 months after I left. Thanks to the massive discrepancy in how long it took me versus him to deliver the route, the higher-ups audited his route. They discovered he was indeed slacking off, taking unauthorized breaks, and apparently having an affair with a woman on his route, all while on the clock. I, on the other hand, was in fantastic shape after all that running and had pockets full of cash for the semester. His regular T6 also got most of the heavy stuff dumped on her, so she didn't get into any trouble for her delivery times because she was swamped with heavy mail on her day. She actually bid for and got the route full time when Mike was shown the door. I've got more stories from my glorious summer at the USPS, but taking down Mike is definitely one of the highlights. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd have to deal with a real-life Karen, but boy was I wrong. This all started about 6 months ago when I inherited my grandpa's old farmhouse. It wasn't anything fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom place on 5 acres outside of town. But it had sentimental value, and I was excited to fix it up as a weekend getaway. The first few months were great. I'd drive out every Saturday morning, work on repairs and renovations, then relax on the porch in the evenings. The neighbors seemed friendly enough, waving as they drove by. One lady in particular, Linda, would often stop to chat. She was probably in her 50s, lived down the road, and seemed nice at first, always asking about my renovation plans and complimenting the work I was doing. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Linda got a little too interested in the property, always hinting that she'd love to buy it if I ever decided to sell. I brushed it off, figuring she was just being neighborly. Big mistake. Things took a turn about 2 months ago. I showed up one Saturday to find Linda parked in my driveway, blocking me from pulling in. She marched up to my car with a scowl on her face. "It's about time you showed up," she snapped. "I've been waiting for hours." I was confused. Can I help you with something, Linda?" "Yes, you can hand over the deed to my property," she said, holding out her hand expectantly. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She was not amused. "This isn't funny," Linda hissed. "I purchased this property fair and square last week. Now stop playing games and give me the paperwork so I can move in." I was dumbfounded. "Linda, I'm sorry, but there must be some misunderstanding. I never sold the property, it's still mine." Her face turned red. "Stop lying. I have the receipt right here." She waved a piece of paper in my face. I got out of the car to take a closer look. It was a handwritten receipt on notebook paper that said, "I hereby sell my property at 123 Country Road to Linda Johnson for $5,000. Signed, John Smith." John Smith? That wasn't even my name. "Linda, I'm sorry, but this is clearly fake. I never signed this. My name isn't even John Smith. You must have been scammed by someone." She started screaming that I was a liar and a thief. I tried to calm her down and explain again that I hadn't sold the property to anyone, but she was having none of it. "That's it! I'm calling the police!" Linda shrieked, whipping out her cell phone. I couldn't believe this was happening. "Go ahead," I said. "They'll tell you the same thing I am." Linda dialed 911 and started wailing to the dispatcher that I was refusing to vacate her property. I heard the dispatcher trying to make sense of her hysterical rant. After a minute, Linda hung up with a smug look. "The police are on their way," she announced. "You'll be sorry when they get here and arrest you for trespassing." I sighed and leaned against my car to wait. This was ridiculous, but I figured the cops would straighten it out quickly. About 15 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. Officer Johnson, according to his name tag, got out and approached us. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked. Linda immediately launched into her tirade. "This man is refusing to leave my property. I bought it last week and he won't give me the deed. I want him arrested for trespassing." Officer Johnson turned to me with a raised eyebrow. I calmly explained the situation, that I had inherited the property from my grandfather, had never sold it, and Linda was mistaken or had been scammed by someone. "Do you have any proof of ownership?" the officer asked me. "Yes, I have the deed and other paperwork inside. I can go get it." Linda tried to object, but Officer Johnson told her to wait while I retrieved the documents. I came back out with the deed, my grandfather's will leaving me the property, and recent tax statements in my name. The officer reviewed everything carefully. "Well, this all looks in order. The property is clearly registered to you, sir." Linda's jaw dropped. But what about my receipt? I paid good money for this place." Officer Johnson asked to see her receipt and barely managed to keep a straight face. "Ma'am, this is not a legal document. It's handwritten on notebook paper and not even signed by the actual property owner. I'm afraid you've been scammed." "That's impossible," Linda sputtered. "He must have forged those documents. I demand you arrest him." The officer was clearly losing patience. "Ma'am, I've seen the official deed and tax records. This property belongs to this gentleman, not you. You need to leave the premises now." Linda's face turned purple with rage. She started screaming that we were all conspiring against her and she'd sue us. Officer Johnson firmly told her to calm down or she'd be arrested for disorderly conduct. Finally, Linda stomped to her car and peeled out of the driveway, still yelling out the window as she sped off. I thanked the officer for his help. He shook his head and chuckled. Some people, huh? You might want to consider getting security cameras set up out here. She seems like the type who might try something again. I took his advice and had cameras installed the following week. Good thing too, because this wasn't the end of my problems with Linda. Over the next month, she kept showing up and trying to get into the house when I wasn't there. My cameras caught her testing windows and doors, peering inside, and once even trying to change the locks. Each time I'd call the police and they'd come out to remove her. After the fourth incident, I'd had enough. I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. Linda tried to contest it, still insisting she was the rightful owner. But when the judge saw the mountain of police reports and video evidence, he didn't hesitate to grant the order. I thought that would be the end of it. But a week later, I drove up to find a moving truck in my driveway and Linda directing guys to carry furniture into my house. I called 911 immediately. I have an emergency. The woman I have a restraining order against is currently breaking into my home with a moving crew. Thankfully, the police arrived quickly. Linda tried to flee, but they caught her down the road. This time, she was arrested for violating the restraining order, breaking and entering, and attempted theft. It turns out she had hired some guys off Craigslist and told them she'd just bought the place. They had no idea they were helping her commit a crime. The police let them go with a warning. Linda ended up serving 30 days in jail and got slapped with some hefty fines. The judge also mandated a mental health evaluation. I almost felt bad for her. Clearly, she was dealing with some serious delusions. But mostly, I was relieved to finally have peace and quiet at my little farmhouse again. I've since finished most of the renovations and love spending weekends out there. The other neighbors have been great, always checking in to make sure I'm not having any more Linda problems. Looking back, it's hard to believe how crazy the whole situation got. I guess the moral of the story is to trust your gut when someone seems a little too interested in your property, and always keep your ownership documents handy. You never know when you'll need to prove the place is really yours. The next one is a petty revenge story. I got moved to a new store as part of a promotion years ago, and I was already pretty nervous. New store, first time as a department manager, and unfortunately for me, the former department manager had really shit the bed in every way possible. The store manager, Marlene, immediately started micromanaging me. She had me on scheduled breaks and just rode me for everything. In some weird, well, your predecessor was always sneaking off for cigarettes, so I'm sure you are too, bullshit. I had to find her and tell her I was going on break. It's still one of the most frustrating things I've ever had a manager do to me. A couple months into me being at that store, I found out that my grandma was being taken off life support that afternoon. I was gutted, and luckily my assistant was there. We usually worked alone, so she comforted me and we worked out the schedule so I could go to the funeral. I went to find my manager to ask her about our bereavement leave, knocked on her door and leaned in. Me. Excuse me, Marlene? Marlene. Whips around in her chair. I am on the phone. Me. Sorry. I found one of the assistant managers who helped me enter it on the scheduling software, and decided I needed to go for a break to go cry somewhere. Marlene saw me and yelled at me to get into her office. As soon as I got in there, she started yelling at me for interrupting her earlier. I apologized again and said since she had her back to the door, I didn't see the phone. Marlene, well, what was so important? I really can't put into words the level of contempt this woman was able to load into a single word. Me. Oh. They took my grandmother off life support today, and I just wanted to ask about the bereavement leave. I asked Assad about it. It's all taken care of, Marlene. You can't just barge into the office, you know. I would have said yes if you'd knocked first and waited. Work on your presentation next time. It's probably been 5 years, but I swear to God I'm still stunned at that line when I think about it. She yelled at me for a little longer before snapping, I'm sorry about your grandma. I managed to make it out of her office before I started crying. A few weeks after the funeral, our district manager was touring the stores and asked me how I was liking it at the new store. I cheerfully asked him if I could speak to him in my back office. He agreed, and Marlene started to walk with us. I looked her dead in the eye and cheerfully said, no, just him. Once we were in the back room, he asked what was going on, and I started crying as I told him. There were some real tears. My grandma was fucking awesome and I still miss her. But goddamn, I was wrenching up every fucking bad thing that had happened to me. My first girlfriend breaking my heart, my cat dying when I was 12, my parents' divorce, all just to bolster my performance. Men can't handle women crying. I saw this grown man panic. I relayed the story exactly as it happened down to the work on your presentation. His jaw hit the fucking floor at that one. He told me he'd take care of it, and as I followed him out of the office, Marlene looked like she was about to puke. I don't remember how long they were in her office for, but it wasn't a quick meeting, and she came over to give me a very begrudging apology with all the sincerity of a petulant child being forced to apologize by their parent. This woman is a legend in the company. She retired a few years ago, and even at different stores, people heard how evil she was. It might be a small victory, but I'll take the W. My apologies for how long it is. I'm ND, and I swear I tried to stay on track. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This story started in 2017, was repeated every year until this year, and I have promised my father-in-law to repeat the compliance if it happens again. My in-laws used to live just outside of town. They moved this past fall to my MIL's home island, and we moved in their place. And when I say just outside, I mean about 2 meters outside of the city plan. To be exact, and important for later, the city plan reached up to the middle of the dirt road that separated their property with the neighboring one. So, back in spring of 2017, my in-laws received a letter from the city council about cleaning their property from dead grass in preparation for summer due to fire hazards, or they would be fined. The letter and the deadline, end of May, were normal. What wasn't normal was the area named. It was their property, the property next to them, inside city limits, and the road in between. My fiel took the letter to the council and explained that the property next to him didn't belong to him and couldn't clean it. They appeared to accept it, but something was nagging him. Now, my fiel had worked in 2 companies in life, both of them handling big government contracts, and his main job was to take care of red tape and government bureaucracy. So he found the exact law that said that the owner was responsible for their property and the city was responsible for any roads and any properties inside city limits that an owner couldn't be found. He had also found, through his connections, that the local council was under investigation for misappropriation of funds, including the funds for cleaning lots that were considered fire hazards. The tactic they used was to include lots that fell under their responsibility to nearby owners and either intimate, with the fear of a fine, to clean them or fine them and pocket the money. My Phil decided to become creative. First, he gathered all the plans related to his property and the one next to him. Next, he cleared his property. He was planning to do that anyway, but only that. He cleared the part of the road that fell outside city limits, and then he waited. The deadline passed, and about 10 days later, a hefty fine arrived. My Phil challenged officially. The council tried to enforce the fine. My Phil challenged it again, presenting his evidence on an open forum of the council. The council insisted they were on the right, and if my FIL didn't pay, they would take legal action. My FIL agreed happily to the legal action. This led to the court appointing an outside inspector to check the property, the city plans, and the work my Phil had done. The council not only lost the case and had to pay legal fees, but were forced to an outside audit that led to a couple of councilmen facing criminal charges. Every year since then, my Phil used to clean his property, and exactly up to the middle of road next to him. That duty has been passed down to me now, which I fulfilled this year. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.